Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video on simple interest. So first, let's go through what interest actually is. So we need to know principal. So principal is an amount of money that you borrow or invest, usually with a bank. Now, when you borrow money from a bank, you have to pay back a little extra. So if you borrow, say, $5,000 from a bank, unfortunately, you're not going to pay them back $5,000. You're going to pay them a bit more. You might pay them back $6,000. That extra money, that extra $1,000, is called interest. Similarly, if you invest $5,000 in a bank account, your money will grow. You'll end up having more money after a certain period of time. You might have $6,000 a year later. Again, that extra $1,000 is called interest. We're going to learn how to calculate interest. So simple interest just involves paying back a percentage of the principal each year. So for example, let's say I borrow $2,000 at 4% per annum. So this 4% is called the interest rate, and PA means per annum or per year. So what this is saying is if I borrow $2,000 from, say, a bank at 4% per year, every year I will have to pay back an extra 4% of $2,000. So 4% of $2,000, lucky we know how to do this, we did it in a previous lesson. So what we do is we convert 4% to a fraction and times by the quantity. So we can just cross out some zeros here, divide top and bottom by 100. I'm left with 4 times 20, which is $80. So what that means is if I borrow $2,000 at 4% per annum or per year, I have to pay back an extra $80 per year. So if I borrowed this money for 1 year, I'd have to pay back $80 in interest. If I borrowed $2,000 for 2 years, I'd have to pay back $160 in interest. For 3 years, I'd have to pay back $240 in interest. And I'm sure you're starting to get the picture. We'd pay back $80 per year. So it's a bit confusing to do it like this. Fortunately, there is a formula we can use for simple interest, which I will now show you. So the formula for simple interest is I equals PRT over 100. So I is interest, P is principal, the initial amount. We went through what interest and principal were on the previous slide. We also have R is the interest rate as a percent, and T is the time. So note, this note here says rate and time must be in the same unit. So usually the rate, as it was on the previous slide, is per annum, per year, which means time would need to be in years. If R was the rate per month, T would need to be in months, and so on, for you to use this formula. So let's look at an example. So let's do this question here. I invest $2,500 at 10% per annum. How much interest will I earn after 4 years? So we're just going to use this formula in red. So what we're looking for is I. We're trying to calculate I, the interest. So we have I equals, so P is the initial amount, which is $2,500. That's P. So it's P times R, the interest rate as a percent, times T. So note here, R and T are in the same units. R is per annum, per year, T is in years. And then I divide by 100. So the reason I divide by 100 is, as I explained on the previous slide, we're actually finding a percent of a quantity. We're finding 10% of 2,500 and then timesing by 4. When you find a percent, you write it over 100. That's why we need to divide by 100. So you can just put this in your calculator and you should get 1,000. So that means I will earn $1,000 in interest. So that just comes from the formula. So how much will I have in total? Well, the amount we have is what I started with plus how much I've earned in interest. So I started with $2,500. I earned another $1,000. So I'm going to have $3,500. How easy is that? So I want you to note the way we calculate interest is the same whether the money is borrowed or invested. We would have calculated this the same way if I borrowed $2,500 and asked how much I earned after 4 years. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this example. Please pause and copy down if you need. I'll now show you an example where R and T are not in the same units. Let's look at this question here. I borrow $3,000 at 8.5% per annum for 30 months. How much interest would I owe? So I'm going to use the same formula here. It doesn't matter whether I'm borrowing or investing the money. So I want to calculate the interest. So I have interest equals P. So that's the initial amount, which is 3,000. Times R times T over 100. The problem I have here is that R is per annum, so it's in years, but T is in months. So before I use this formula, I need to change T so it's in years. Because R is per annum, per year, I need to change T to years. So 30 months, if I want to change it in year, I just divide by 12. So 30 divided 12 is 2.5. 30 months is 2.5 years. So when I'm using the formula, I go I equals P times R, but T is 2.5. So I'm doing PRT over 100. So again, T is 2.5 because it's years, and the rate was in years. So that's what I mean about R and T needing to be in the same unit. This is now in years, this is in years, and you can put it straight in your calculator. And so the answer you should get is $637.50. So this person, they borrowed $3,000 and they have to pay back this in interest. So all up, they would pay back $3,637.50. All right, one more example now, and we'll find the monthly repayment. Let's look at this question here. I borrow $4,000 for 5 years at 4% per annum simple interest. What would be my monthly repayment? So I'm figuring out how much I would need to pay back each month so I could pay off this loan in 5 years. So firstly, 5 years is 60 months. So before we went months to years, we divided by 12. So to go from years to months, we times by 12. So that's what this means here. 5 years, 60 months. Now, I'd love it if you could go to a bank, borrow $4,000, and only pay back $4,000. But we can't. We can't just do 4,000 divided by 60, because I'm going to need to pay back the $4,000 plus the interest. So to figure out the monthly repayment, I'm going to need to first figure out how much interest I would be charged. So I'm going to figure out the interest using this formula. So the interest would just be principal, how much we originally borrowed, times rate times time, divided by 100. So this time, we didn't need to change T, years, because T is in years and R is per annum or per year. So if I put that in my calculator, I should get $800. So I would have to pay back in interest $800. So that means the total amount that I need to pay back is $4,800. Because I need to pay back the principal plus the interest, $4,800. So in order to pay back that in 5 years, I would need to divide 4,800 by 60. So I'm just going to call it rep for repayment. Would just be the whole $4,800 I must pay back divided by 60. And that gives me $80 per month. So people often mess up questions like this. They think you only have to pay back the $4,000 or you only have to pay the interest. You always have to pay back the principal plus interest, and you just divide that by the number of months to get the monthly repayment. Okay, we are done. Thank you so much for watching this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.